All right. So today we're going to talk about leptin. We'll start this again. And really why your body isn't responding and how leptin is a signal to your body that really signals safety and it signals um, it's just a different way to look at how your body is responding to your environment, your food, your meal timing. There's a huge piece of circadian rhythm in this. And really a little background on why and I've obviously been using this in my practice for a while now. But I decided to talk about it more because recently I got some blood work done, and I was back in Idaho for a couple months in February and March. And I was going through a really stressful time dealing with a bunch of website transitions. And it was probably the most stressed I've been in a long time. And not only that, but it was cold and it was gray. And I was going out at sunrise, which I'm really consistent with, but I was not going out during UVA rise, which is another really important window. And I had all the stress. And then I happened to get blood work done right at the end of those 2 months. And my leptin came back much higher than I was expecting. And I was kind of shocked, to be honest, because I felt like I was doing things right. But in hindsight, and the more I really started to look at this a little deeper, I was like, oh, well, my nervous system was a wreck and I wasn't getting the right light signal. And I probably was eating later than I normally do. And I probably was doing all, on and on and on. So I started implementing a bunch of things. I noticed even for myself, which my weight is really consistent, but I started noticing that I was carrying an extra 5 pounds or so, especially around my hips and my abdomen. And I was like, I would not go away. It was wild to me because normally that's really easy. So I got really curious, and that's basically what prompted me to do this webinar today. So I want to share those things with you and just help people understand a little bit more about the importance of leptin as one of the root causes of imbalances in the body, that is absolutely within our control to fix and resolve. And so I'm hoping you'll learn some things. So if you don't know me, my name is Brooke Erickson, and I am a functional nutritionist. I've been in practice now for about 10 years, and I'm really focused on getting to the root cause of imbalances in the body, helping people to trust their body again, trust the wisdom of their body, get curious. I love the question why. Very curious about learning and understanding more when it comes to the reason our body's out of balance versus chasing symptoms, or what I like to call manipulating your biochemistry, which you can do that all day long and make numbers change, but are you really fixing things at the root level? One of my favorite sayings is that your body is always communicating with you. So every single bit of information that comes in the way of symptoms or how you're feeling is all information. And if you begin to come from a place of curiosity about that, you can really start to get more in tune with your body and understand what it is trying to communicate, and then how can you help support it better. Your body is never wrong. It's never wrong. Everything it's doing all of the time is either trying to keep you alive or trying to help you heal. And so the more you can support the environment that allows it to do that, then the better you're going to be able to heal and kind of come through some of these symptoms or health issues that you're kind of working through. So today we're going to talk about why your body isn't responding like it used to. Whoops. What is leptin? Why leptin matters? Really the root cause of my goodness, my mouse is just calm down, mouse, please. Thank you. The root of leptin dysfunction, like what causes that? What are the different components that can make that be off? We're going to talk a little bit about the perimenopause connection. I'm going to touch on GLP-1s just because I feel like that's a big topic, and I'm not going to get into a whole thing about that, but I'm just going to, touch on that a little bit. And then we're going to talk about how you can reset your leptin and what are the things you can start to do. So, how many of you feel like your body has changed, but you can't figure out why? You can't explain why. you've tried the different things, you've tried different diets, you've tried, you know, fasting, you've tried all sorts of things, right? There's so many biohacks and paths, right, to health and trying to resolve some of these things. And it can be frustrating when you feel like you're trying. I was even feeling that recently where I was like, this is wild. Like, normally I pull this lever, I pull this lever, and everything works great. So those things that used to work before, there's a reason they're not working now. There's something else going on. And it's not just you're getting older, and it's not just, oh, I'm entering perimenopause. I'm going to be a myth buster on that one, because I don't buy that. So what you could be experiencing is that your weight loss is feeling harder, your energy is lower, cravings are a big one. So I think that's the big kind of push for GLP-1s right now too, is, everyone wants to turn down their food noise, and we're going to talk about why that is and where that's coming from. Your sleep can be worse. You tend to gain a little more weight, belly fat area, midsection hips is another really big one that I see. And your body's just less predictable. You can't pull those levers like you used to. So most women assume this is just aging, it's hormones. And so today I want to introduce this other piece of the puzzle, which is leptin, which I think is really, we keep peeling back the layers of the onion, trying to get to the actual root. Leptin is way down there at the core. It's one of the most basic fundamental pieces. And I would consider, a lot of these other hormone imbalances often are upstream from the leptin imbalance. So again, people are going to look to estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, insulin, which are all really important, and they all play a role, and they're all connected to leptin. But most people are missing the leptin piece and maybe going straight to hormone replacement therapy, or working on insulin resistance through, maybe medications like a GLP-1 or something like that, or they're testing their adrenals and their cortisol's off, and they're taking supplements to try to, manage that or manipulate your cortisol, when really there's another layer that we want to look at first. So what is leptin? So leptin is your body's master energy availability hormone. So what it does, it's this key regulator that tells your body how much stored energy you have. So kind of how it works is when you go to bed, and this is when it's working the way it's supposed to. When you go to bed, your leptin level is going to, or your leptin signal is going to load on the hypothalamus of your brain roughly around midnight, give or take. And it's basically downloading information, telling your body, here's how much stored energy we have. And based on that, the following day, your body should make adjustments saying, okay, we have lots of stored energy. Let's go ahead and ramp up metabolism. Let's burn some of this. We have some extra to release. And then we'll adjust our appetite for the next day. So maybe you will be a little less hungry the next day because you ate a lot of food the day before. So it should be working to help adjust. It's really managing metabolic flexibility as well. That's a big piece of how this is connected. So it's a regulator, like I said, of metabolism, hunger. So it's going to adjust how hungry you are or not. Your fat storage, how much do you hold on to? How much do you release? And it's really that messenger. We store leptin in our fat cells. That's where it lives. So the more fat cells you have, the more leptin you typically have. And those leptin signals, that hormone gets released from your fat cells and communicates, like I said, with the hypothalamus of your brain. So that signal is really tied to your body feeling safe. And we're going to talk about what does safety mean for the body, right? So when the body feels safe to burn energy, it's going to release. When it feels like it needs to conserve energy for survival and under scarcity situations, it's going to hold on to it. So when we're thinking about something like a GLP-1 and we're thinking about these cravings and how people, that food noise, a lot of that can be tied to this leptin signaling that isn't working, right? And so what can happen over time is then that ends up affecting your thyroid function, reproductive hormones, your stress response. If your body's interpreting, I'm not safe or I'm under stress, that's a very different signal that your body's receiving, and it's going to shut down things like reproduction. It's going to conserve energy. Your body doesn't know the difference between I'm being chased by a tiger and I just am not, I'm in a scarcity mindset, or my body's in a scarcity mindset. So it's the safety part and helping your body feel like there's an abundance of resources for you is really part of the path to fixing this leptin. Okay, so again, I talked about this. It's produced in the fat cells, it communicates with the brain. The big message that it sends is we have enough. So if you think about as you're gaining weight, you have more and more fat cells. That leptin is saying, hey, we're good. We have lots of good energy. We don't need to eat so much. Let's dial down the appetite a little bit and let's ramp up that metabolism. So it's going to influence hunger, satiety, metabolism, energy production, thyroid function, stress, and sleep. So it's a lot of these are bidirectional. So your stress is going to impact leptin, and leptin will impact stress. And sleep, same thing. Your sleep will impact leptin, and leptin signaling will also affect your sleep. So they kind of are a two-way street for a lot of these. And so they kind of have to be approached in a more holistic way and combined, right? There has to be more than one approach. It's just not one thing. So the biggest reframe here is that leptin is not just a hunger hormone, it's the safety and abundance signal. There's so much right now out there in the holistic world about nervous system regulation and how important that is, and a lot of things to do with, breath work and, meditation and all these tools, which are amazing. I mean, I love human design as really helping people get in alignment and work on nervous system stuff as well. So those tools are incredible. And there's an actual physiological component to this when it comes to your nervous system that we need to approach also. We have to look at, does your body physically feel safe? Because that will also impact how your nervous system is reacting or responding to that. By the way, if you have questions, just take yourself off mute and interrupt me because I can't see the chat right now. So, okay, so the thing that's really interesting about leptin is it's usually not a lack of leptin, as you can imagine, because you have an excess of adipose tissue in the body, and so you have plenty of leptin. But what happens with leptin resistance is that the signal gets sent. This is very similar to insulin resistance, which actually leptin resistance almost always precedes insulin resistance. So again, it's a little more upstream or downstream. I don't know which one you would say, but if you catch leptin first, then it's likely that's not going to turn into insulin resistance, which isn't going to turn into prediabetes, et cetera. So the signal gets sent, the fat cells are releasing leptin to the brain, and they're saying, hey, we've got enough. And the brain isn't responding. The brain is not getting the message. So when it doesn't register that, it's then not responding or acting appropriately. And the body instead, because it doesn't get the signal saying, hey, we're good, it interprets that as, oh no, resources are scarce and we're in a scarcity mindset. So this is going to dial up the opposite. It's going to dial up hunger. It's going to dial up cravings, and it's going to conserve energy. So it's going to protect those metabolic shifts that normally we want to be increasing and dialing up. So as you can see, it's doing the opposite. It puts us in this vicious cycle, right? Where we have extra weight, we're trying to lose the weight, but then our body isn't getting the signal, and instead it's causing more hunger. So for a lot of people who overeat initially, this is where that can, be one of the ways that shows up. I do want to say that there's also, you can have leptin that's too high and you can have leptin that's too low. So there's kind of a sweet spot window that's optimal for that. And when it gets high, we look at that as more insulin or leptin resistance. And then when it goes low, that's a more scarcity response. And the low is doing the same thing. It's still telling the body, conserve energy, conserve. We're in scarcity, but usually when it's low, that happens quite often. If people haven't been eating, they're under eating. That starts to happen a lot. But you want to kind of figure out where you are. And there's general approaches to this where we're going to do a lot of the same things to kind of correct those balances. And then there's a little bit of nuance between the two. Some things you would do a little bit differently if it's under, and then things you would do specifically if it's higher. And the optimal kind of window and range you're looking for is between 7 and 10. So again, this is like optimal, perfect, ideal. 7 to 10 is, pretty much likely that you're very metabolically flexible. Your body's able to flip the switch between burning fat and burning carbohydrates in the form of glucose in the body. So that's what we want. You can easily get a test for leptin from your doctor. It's a blood test. The only thing I'll say is that I do find sometimes working with doctors, a lot of times they are hesitant to run tests that they don't know what to do anything with or what they're for. And most doctors are not going to know what leptin is. They're not going to know the significance of it. So try to get that through your doctor. If you can't, there are ways, and I'll send some resources in a follow-up email where you can test your leptin through Fullscript, directly through a Quest lab, or something like that. So there's some other options if you need an alternate for that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what causes leptin dysfunction. So again, the brain is constantly asking, is it safe? Do we have enough resources? Should we conserve energy? These are the questions it's constantly asking, right? And so when it's getting this a yes for, is it safe? And yes, do we have enough resources? And no, we don't need to conserve. That's going to show up more as our body is, again, metabolically flexible. We're able to burn weight pretty easily. So what disrupts that is either chronic overeating and excess body fat. So over time, when you keep overeating and you have all these fat cells, again, it's kind of the similar situation to insulin resistance. If you keep pumping glucose out, your cells over time stop getting that message, right? If you keep pumping leptin out, eventually your body isn't listening to that anymore and it gets resistant to that signal. Chronic dieting and undereating. This is a huge one that I see. I can't tell you how many clients I come across who are undereating what is their, below what's called their resting metabolic rate or their basal metabolic rate. When you do that over and over and over again, your brain and your body interprets that as we're starving. This is scarcity. We are trying to survive. We better downregulate anything that isn't critical right now in order to survive. And so when you do that, especially when you do that for a period of time, not only are you creating that scarcity or unsafe feeling in your body, but your metabolic rate will adjust over time and it will slowly start to accept the fact like, oh, I guess we're not getting enough energy, so we better figure out how to live off less. And then that, this is where we see yo-yo dieting really backfire because people restrict so much and then they go to eat again and then their body is in excess, right, with what they need as far as, energy and nutrients and things like that. So that's a big one that I see. Poor sleep is huge. So when you sleep at night, two things happen. One, I mentioned around midnight, that's when your brain loads the leptin to give that signal. So if you're someone who's up past midnight, not going to bed by, I would say 11 at the latest, you might be missing that signal. Your brain might not be getting that on a regular basis. And then when you don't get enough sleep, so studies have shown when you get 6 or less hours of sleep, this really impacts your leptin levels. What happens when you have less than that? So there's two hormones, leptin and ghrelin. I like to call ghrelin the gremlin. And when you don't sleep enough in the night, so 6 hours or less, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but I definitely notice I will crave carbohydrates more the next day. So you end up with more ghrelin and less leptin the next day. Leptin is supposed to say, "Hey, we're good. We have plenty of energy," and it'll adjust your appetite so you're not having those cravings. When you don't get that, you get more ghrelin, and ghrelin is the gremlin. And that makes you want to eat more, especially carbohydrates. And you can have a day where you're just binging all day long very easily with that. Circadian rhythm disruption is the other huge one. It's your circadian rhythm manages the leptin signaling. So there's something called POMC, which is in the neurons in the hypothalamus that gets the leptin gets attached to. And that signaling is what tells the body how much leptin or when to release it. So it receives that message from leptin as well. And that POMC, that light signal, comes from the sun. It comes from getting light at the right time during the day. So if you're not getting those right light signals, that's going to impact the signaling and your brain isn't going to get that message. So one of the very first things I have people work on is circadian rhythm alignment. And there's multiple pieces to that. But it's getting the right light at the right time and then not getting exposed to other types of light, especially in the evening. So that's a really huge piece of this. Your circadian rhythm, as a side note, is really foundational for all hormones. All of the signaling that your body gets. So your circadian rhythm is really the master clock that is running the show for your whole body. So I think of circadian rhythm as that master clock is kind of like air traffic control at an airport. And all of your cells and your organs in the body have their own clock. They have their own peripheral clock. And they're kind of like the airplanes at the airport. So if your master clock is not getting the right signal, if it doesn't get the right information telling your mitochondria what to do when, then it's kind of like running an airport with no air traffic control. So you can imagine the chaos that would create. Your body is very similar. If it doesn't get the messages at the right time of day, or it's getting the wrong messages at the wrong time of the day, then that throws everything off and your body doesn't know what to do when. So your sex hormones, your stress hormones, your neurotransmitters, your gut, your digestion, literally everything is connected to this rhythm. And so it's a really important first step in resolving any hormone imbalance and especially leptin. So next one would be chronic stress and elevated cortisol. As I mentioned, my own experience, I saw firsthand what stress did to my leptin levels. It's elevating cortisol and that disrupts leptin, right? So stress is very, very important. Your nervous system is very, very important for leptin. And then blood sugar and insulin dysregulation. I kind of already touched on that, but this is all connected. It's all related. If your blood sugar is, elevated, or you are not eating, meal timing is huge for leptin resistance and resolving leptin. Eating the right foods at the right time, skipping meals, things like that. That's a huge trigger for leptin to become dysregulated. Inflammation is another huge driver. So having chronic inflammation is going to automatically impact that leptin resistance. And then probably a more obvious one would be refined carbohydrates and processed foods. Leptin wants to feel satiated. Satiety is what leptin receives as the signal that says, oh, we're safe, this is good. So when you're eating processed foods and refined carbohydrates, it doesn't have that same satiation that you would get from eating a really nutrient dense meal that's balanced with protein and healthy fats and good carbohydrates, right? With fiber and whole food sources. Very, very different signal. So the biggest message here is that leptin responds to information, not just calories, right? So calories are, yes, they are important, and it's good to know your range of what your calorie intake is. But honestly, when you're eating the right foods, you don't really need to count calories. It's really hard to overeat chicken and vegetables. And I'm not saying that's all you eat, but when you're eating those nutrient dense foods, it's really hard to overeat those. Um, you're just going to get full. It's not, you can't just endlessly or mindlessly go through, um, chicken like you can a bag of chips or something like that. So the calories do matter, but not from the leptin perspective. They actually respond, or leptin responds more to the information it's receiving from these signals. Okay, let's talk a little bit about perimenopause. So this is a really interesting comparison. On the left, these are symptoms of leptin dysfunction. So, and then you can see on the right the symptoms of perimenopause, right? They're so similar. There's so many overlaps here, right? So when women get into their 40s and they start experiencing any of these things, weight gain, changes in their body composition, increased cravings, fatigue, feel like their metabolism is slowing down, brain fog, sleep issues, hot flashes, etc. All of those things are very real. And if we look at leptin, weight loss, increased hunger, food cravings, low energy, fatigue, abdominal fat, brain fog, disrupted sleep, on and on and on, right? So now everything isn't the same. Obviously, the hot flashes and the night sweats are a little more specific to perimenopause. But where I think we go wrong is we go straight to addressing perimenopause. We just automatically assume this must be perimenopause. And we're skipping a step, which is, oh, well, let me go work on my leptin first. And ideally get that dialed in, and then almost always you're going to see quite a reduction in these perimenopause symptoms. I do truly believe that most of these, root cause symptoms are coming from more of a leptin dysfunction, a circadian misalignment, these fundamental things, lack of good minerals and hydration. It's these core things that when we have those really well established, they're going to make that transition going through perimenopause and menopause so much more smooth and seamless. It's not perfect, but it will definitely make it easier. So I just wanted to compare that because I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand, that they have more control. They're not just succumb to this transition that's out of their control, and they don't need to go start chasing hormone replacement therapy, right out the gate, if you're interested in actually more of a root cause approach. All right, so the GLP-1 conversation. The biggest thing here that I want to point out is one of the main reasons. There's obviously two big reasons that people tend to want to do these. They want to lose weight, and quiet the food noise and suppress their hunger. But what happens when you do that, as you can see now, where leptin is absolutely impacting your cravings and your appetite. So if that's off, that means there's something going on, right? So get curious. Why? When you take a GLP-1, all you're doing is quieting that food noise, which is great, but you're just suppressing that hunger and overriding the system. So again, can you manipulate your biochemistry? Can you override that system? Absolutely. But why did the body stop regulating hunger appropriately in the first place? Why did those cravings increase? And why did that energy decline? Right? If you can ask these questions and understand that from a bigger perspective, then chasing what I really believe is more of a band-aid approach for most people. I'm not saying there's not situations where maybe it makes sense. But those GLP-1s, they're just masking the symptoms. And then as soon as you stop taking the GLP-1, you still have a leptin issue. How it works a little bit, like initially there's some research showing that GLP-1s do help to lower leptin a little bit initially, mostly because people are just eating so much less food, right? Most of the women that I've seen who are on them that I've worked with are still under eating, despite the conversations around how much protein they need to be having and how much food they need to be having and exercising, most of them are still not eating enough. They just don't have the appetite. And so what's happening is they are initially going to lose some weight. They're going to maybe bring that leptin down, but then over time, what did we just talk about? If the body doesn't feel safe, if it feels like it's in scarcity, if it feels like it needs to conserve because it's not getting enough, there's a tipping point there where you're going to plateau and your body's not going to respond the same. And then down the line, when you try to come off of that, now you've got a bigger mess because your leptin signaling is really messed up. And it's going to be really hard to come off of that and then maintain that weight loss when you haven't worked on the foundational pieces of why that was happening in the first place. So again, this is a personal decision for people, whether they want to do something like this. I'm not here to bash them at all. I just really want people to have all the information and be able to make a really educated decision, because I don't think people are really explaining that there are other ways to do this. And there's reasons that this might not be the best first step for a lot of people. So if leptin signaling is disrupted, then if you just suppress your appetite, you're not addressing that deeper issue. It's really potentially just a Band-Aid approach for most people. And again, there are situations where I would say if someone is morbidly obese, this probably is a good tool for that person as a bridge. And you want to be working on the other things at the same time, right? It's not just the magic pill that I think people want it to be. Okay, so today we covered what leptin is, what disrupts it, why it matters, why so many women struggle. But what we didn't get into was the how. And so what I created was a 21-day leptin reset. And what I want to do is really walk people through, we make those changes in 21 days. Those are where we can really create new habits. And so much of what goes into resetting leptin is not just changing your diet, it is lifestyle changes as well. And so walking through each of the different steps of what you can do, what is the things that are throwing it off that you're needing to kind of fine tune. And I'm going to walk you through that process. So I'm starting this soon, next Monday, because I feel like it's summer and people are, I don't want to say anxious, but they're eager to get going and start really helping with some of these challenges that they're having with regarding their weight or their energy or just fatigue or different things. So during this 21 days, you're going to learn how to reduce those cravings and stay full longer. You're going to learn how to create that stable energy and support your healthy metabolism. You're going to definitely improve your sleep. I see people immediately start to have more energy in the morning. It's going to really help rewire sending your brain those signals of safety so that it then feels like it can start to release that energy. And then you're going to learn a little bit more about what are your body's symptoms trying to tell you, and leave with sustainable habits that you can implement long-term, right? So this isn't a quick fix. This isn't a 21-day crash diet. It's not an elimination diet. It's not any of those things. This is not a quick fix. This is teaching you how to do this from a fundamental level that is a foundational piece you can take with you forever. So what is included in this? So this is going to be weekly. For each week, we're going to do a live group coaching call and come together. We're going to talk about challenges you're having, answer questions. The first one, obviously, we'll kind of go over the guide and really specifically what each of the things are that you're going to be working on. And then I'll be there to answer questions. And then I'm going to have a private Telegram group. So you will actually have access to me for those 21 days. You'll be able to ask questions. We'll be able to share our wins, get guidance. And then obviously you'll be able to also connect with other women who are going through this 21 days with you. So I think this is something different that I haven't done before. I really feel like the day-to-day support is important. And I think it will be more effective if people can make those daily tweaks and changes as they're implementing these changes. And then, of course, I'll provide a leptin reset guide. So you'll get the framework step by step, each of the different areas that we're going to focus on related to how to get your circadian rhythm in balance, what to do for meal timing, what foods to eat, when to eat them. We're going to talk a lot about sleep. We're going to talk about all sorts of different things that kind of play into this. And then I'm going to provide some recipes and meal plans. So you will have some, especially things like breakfast. There's very specific leptin friendly breakfasts that we'll focus on. And so I'll provide some different recipes and meal plans for that to give you somewhere to start. So, any questions? See if I can get out of here. I think I stopped sharing. Okay,
Hey, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry, I'm out walking, so it might be a little bit windy. No, I think it's great information, and there's just so many similarities, I feel like, with what you're speaking to, um, and how I feel about the body communicating and how I feel about GLP-1s and all of that. It's just, um, it's shocking to see the side by side of the perimenopause symptoms because, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's not something that I'm embracing, let's say. Like, I love new seasons of life, but the whole like, perimenopause has become a catch-all, and I
Oh,
reject it.
yeah.
Like, I reject so much of it because I'm like, there's so much that we have the ability, we have the control over, And
Yep.
so, anyway, it's refreshing to hear the way that you spoke about all of this. So thank you. Yeah, and then, because I wanna share some of the like, what you're doing, do you have, like, a post on your page that I can reshare?
Yeah. So I'm going to. I have a page that I will I can't talk. Share where you'll be able to go and read more about the challenge. I can repost the recording of this, so if people want to listen to this first, they can do that. I'm happy to share that. Um, so those would be kind of the two ways for this in particular, this kind of program. But yeah, anyone can join, and feel free to share it with anyone.
Okay, cool. Because in my business, I don't do meal plans or something like what you're doing, and so I would love, the ability to guide people towards you for this specifically is such a big deal right now.
Yeah, it's huge.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
huge, and that's the reason I'm kind of, you know, speaking more and more about it, because I'm seeing so many clients coming to me and they're just immediately everything is, "Oh, well, it's perimenopause. Oh, I think it's perimenopause." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's look at all these other things first, you know?" And I just feel like I really want to empower women to take control back, to understand that there is more that they can do and they don't just have to, succumb to the drudgery of perimenopause and, fight that whole process with hormone replacement therapy. And I mean, so many people getting on the GLP-1s, and I just feel like not everyone is going to want to do it holistically. Not everyone is going to want to do the work, and that's totally fine. But I want to give people the information that there's another way. There's another way they can feel better, if they want to do the work and really commit to that. So, yeah, I would love if you would share that. I'm not doing a whole 21-day meal plan because I actually don't normally do a lot of meal plans either, but I felt like this was important to include for this, just so people have an idea of what does that look like. And more so, the meal timing is going to be really important in that program, because that makes a big difference.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big thing is the levers, like, I use that same word, are so different. They are.
Yeah.
And you know what? Instead of doing the punch list of 5 things, no, you literally have to go all in, you know? And,
Yep.
I mean, There is a craze, and I'm sure we could talk about it offline, but I mean, in our age group, I really don't know anyone who's not on hormone replacement therapy or GLP-1s, and
Yep,
that is wild to me.
same.
Wild.
Yeah, I know. Same.
It's
Yeah,
like,
and
whoa.
it's interesting because, everyone's different, and I don't, say this to like, um I don't know, everyone's different, but like, I'm 49 and I'm still having my cycle. I'm not having, other than tinnitus, which is driving me bonkers, and I got to get to the bottom of that. Um I don't really have any symptoms yet of this, right? My cycles are a little off, things like that. But I really truly attribute this to my diet and lifestyle. I've been so consistent with circadian rhythm. I've been so
Mhm.
consistent with, how I'm eating and what I'm eating and all of that kind of stuff. And I do think that that's made a huge difference in how my body is navigating this. And this whole leptin thing to me was like, whoa, okay, something's going on. And I just got curious about that because I'm like, okay, I gotta dial it in. I'm doing okay, but I could do better. I can be more consistent with, certain times that I'm, outside. I can be more consistent with my, dialing in, not snacking sometimes, and different things like that. Right. So, yeah, I think it's
Yeah, and knowing you have control over those things and, like, the things that bring you out of I hate to use the word, but, like, being more of a victim to circumstances
yep,
and being more proactive and, like, committing to the lifestyle. Like, it is
yep,
a lifestyle.
it is absolutely.
If you don't want to do the things that, alter your biochemistry.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that all day long. I
Yeah,
mean,
totally.
between peptides and, GLP-1s and supplements, and I mean, you could biohack your life away if you really wanted to.
Mhm.
Or you can work with it, and just support its natural function, and believe in its ability to heal and to thrive, in the right environment. So yeah, it's pretty wild watching what's going on right now. I'm just kind of like, whoa.